I advise students, as much as possible, look for the job that you would take if you didn't need a job. I mean, don't sleepwalk through life, and don't say it's all going to be great. I'll do this and I'll do that, and I'm just marking time till I get to be older. As I've told people, that's like saving up sex for your old age. I mean, it just is not it is not a good idea. Yeah.
What are you urging them to do?
I'll explain just what I'm talking about. Now, you really want to be doing what you love doing, and you can't necessarily find it on your first job.
Right.
But don't give up before you find it.
Ideas don't come out fully formed. They only become clear as you work on them. You just have to get started. If I had to know everything about connecting people before I got started, I never would have built Facebook. Movies and pop culture just get this all wrong. The idea of a single eureka moment is a dangerous lie. It makes us feel inadequate because we feel like we haven't had ours yet. And it prevents people with seeds of good ideas from ever getting started in the first place.
And I think if you believe in what you're doing, many people will tell you, why you're mistaken, why it'll never work. But if you really believe passionately in what you're doing, just keep going, keep pushing on, and until you either succeed or at least you realize that it's just not going to happen. And then if you don't succeed, pick yourself up and try again. And ultimately, if you're that determined, you will succeed in life. And if you don't, you'll have a hell of a lot of fun trying.
First of all, I really need to give some thought to how can I provide advice that would be most helpful, and I'm not sure I've given enough thought to that to give you the best possible answer. But I think certainly being focused on something that you're confident will have high value to someone else, and just being really rigorous in making that assessment. Because people tend to, a natural human tendency is wishful thinking. So a challenge for entrepreneurs is to say, well, what's the difference between really believing in your ideals and sticking to them versus pursuing some unrealistic dream that doesn't actually have merit? And that is a really difficult thing to tell you. Can you tell the difference between those two things?
Right.
So you need to be sort of very rigorous in your self-analysis. I think certainly extremely tenacious, and then just work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, 80 to 100 hour weeks every week.
Gosh,
and then
a lot of work.
All those things improve the odds of success.
Okay.
I mean, if other people are putting in 40-hour work weeks and you're putting in 100-hour work weeks, then even if you're doing the same thing, you know that in 1 year you will achieve what they achieve. You will achieve in 4 months what it takes them a year to achieve.
I knew I was wired to be excited about business. How or why, I don't know, but and there's certain guys that have the genetics to jump out of the gym, right? There's certain guys, that when they golf, they have the muscle memory and the discipline. Dirk Nowitzki may not be the most talented guy in the NBA, but his discipline and his focus to do what's necessary to be successful, he's willing to do, and combine it with being 7 feet tall and being skilled, it makes him an amazing basketball player. So it's understanding what your skill set is, finding the right place to use those skills, and then going for it. Will that make you 250 grand? It depends if you pick the right industry. But whatever industry you pick, if you outwork everybody, if you try to be a little smarter than everybody, if you try to be a better salesperson than everybody, if you try to be better prepared than everybody, you've got your best chance. Because if you don't do it and somebody else does, I have the saying, work like someone's trying to take it all away from you. I actually work like someone's spending 24 hours, working 24 hours to take it all away from you. And that's kind of the way I look at it.
Everything I did, I was following something I really cared about. something I loved, something I was passionate about. And I kept following that passion, whether it was cars, whether it was anthropology, whether it was art, photography. And eventually it led me to my huge passion, my real passion, which was making movies, which combined all of those things. And I realized that had I gone on to get my degree in anthropology, I would have probably made anthropological movies in New Guinea or someplace, and eventually been on National Geographic and the History Channel, and been then making features, and I'd have done Star Wars just the same. If I'd have gone to Art Center and become an illustrator, I would have probably started doing animation and doing animated films and making animated things, and then ultimately I would have gone on and been right where I was. So no matter which route I took, because I cared about all of them, they all led to the same place. Had I done what my father had wished me to do, which is to go into the office equipment business with him, which I knew I wasn't going to do, I knew I hated that, my life would have been unpleasant. And so I think it's very important not to do what your peers think you should do, not do what your parents think you should do, or your teachers, but to do what you inside, or even your culture thinks, but do what's inside you.
So it's easy to have ideas. It's very hard to turn an idea into a successful product. There are a lot of steps in between, and it takes persistence, relentlessness. So I always tell people who are, who think they want to be entrepreneurs, you need a combination of stubborn relentlessness and flexibility. And you have to know when to be which. And basically, you need to be stubborn on your vision, because otherwise it'll be too easy to give up. But you need to be very flexible on the details, because as you go along pursuing your vision, you'll find that some of your preconceptions were wrong, and you're going to need to be able to change those things. So I think taking an idea successfully all the way to the market and turning it into a real product that people care about and that really improves people's lives is a lot of hard work.
I say to my girls all of the time that your real work is to figure out where your power base is and to work on the alignment of your personality, your gifts that you have to give, with the real reason why you're here. That's the number one thing you have to do, is to work on yourself and to fill yourself up and keep your cup full. Keep yourself full. Now, I used to be afraid of that. I used to be afraid, particularly from people who say, oh, she's so full of herself. She's so full of herself. And now I embrace it. I consider it a compliment that I am full of myself. Because you only when you're full, I'm full, I'm overflowing, my cup runneth over. I have so much to offer and so much to give. And I am not afraid of honoring myself. It's miraculous when you think about it.
We are pretty lucky people, and the people say, you work very hard. True, in this world, there's so many people work very hard, but they're not that. I told my team when we IPO'd, I asked a lot of people sitting there, I say, all of you guys, most of you guys, millionaires and so rich. But 15 years ago, who are we? It's so difficult for us to hire people 15 years ago. People who are not that bad. I said, people can still walk on the street. We hire them. Because nobody believes internet. And they join the company. Those people who believe they're smart, they were headhunted to the other company. They set up their own company. Those people, nobody go to headhunting them. They stayed. Today they become successful. Very key reasons, we insist, we persist, we never give up. Okay. We believe the dreams together.
My goal is to simplify complexity. I just want to build stuff that really simplifies our base human interaction.
One does have to be focused on the short-term and money coming in when creating a company, because otherwise the company will die. So I think that a lot of times people think like creating a company is going to be fun. I would say it's really not that fun. I mean, there are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And and particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you have like the worst. You have a filter for the crappiest problem in the company, the most pernicious and painful problem. So I wouldn't say I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it, and have a fairly high pain threshold. And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. And there's some truth to that. The staring into the abyss part is that you're going to be constantly facing the extermination of the company. Because most startups fail. It's like 90%, arguably 99% of startups fail. So that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. It can be quite stressful. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You've got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time.
So how do you keep your focus on the big picture when you're constantly faced with, we could be out of business in a month?
Well, it's just a very small percentage of mental energy is on the big picture. Like you know where you're generally heading for, and the actual path is going to be some sort of zigzaggy thing in that direction. And try not to deviate too far from the path that you want to be on, but you're going to have to do that to some degree. But I don't want to diminish the. I mean, I think the profit motive is a good one if the rules of an industry are properly set up. So there's nothing fundamentally wrong with profit. In fact, profit just means that people are paying you more for whatever you're doing than you're spending to create it. That's a good thing. and if that's not the case, then you'll be out of business, and rightfully so. Because you're not adding enough value.
And I think for all of you, there are many areas where there's leverage available in the world, where one or two people, a good idea, a lot of hard work can really make a difference. There's many, many things like that. And it's good not to forget that, but it's good to look for those things. Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And one of the things that surprised me, that's a very broad mission. It's a lot of work. We're not going to achieve it anytime soon, right? It's almost an impossible task. But it's an exciting task, and one that you can get other people excited about, and they can help you. And one of the things that also surprised me is it's sometimes easier to do something that's harder because other people get excited about it, and you can get much more resource. You can get tremendous resources to solve a hard problem, whereas you might only get minor resources to solve a small problem.
It's easy to have ideas. It's very hard to turn an idea into a successful product. There are a lot of steps in between, and it takes persistence, relentlessness. So I always tell people who are, who think they want to be entrepreneurs, you need a combination of stubborn relentlessness and flexibility. And you have to know when to be which. And basically, you need to be stubborn on your vision, because otherwise it'll be too easy to give up. But you need to be very flexible on the details, because as you go along pursuing your vision, you'll find that some of your preconceptions were wrong, and you're going to need to be able to change those things. So I think taking an idea successfully all the way to the market and turning it into a real product that people care about and that really improves people's lives is a lot of hard work.
I remember asking my dad to, I wanted new basketball shoes because I was a basketball junkie back then. He's like, well, your shoes work. If you want a new pair of tennis shoes, you have to go out there and get a job. And I'm like, Dad, I'm 12 years old. And it just so happens he was playing poker with his buddies. And one of his buddies was like, well, I got a job for you. I've got these garbage bags that we distribute. You can sell them door to door. I'm like, okay. And it was when I was selling them and realizing that I liked to sell and that I could sell and that I recognized that selling was about providing a service and creating value for people, that I knew that I would literally back then, I knew that I could always succeed. I remember I was 16, I think, when I started a stamp company and started going to stamp shows and trade shows and just working a little bit harder than other people and trading up from one stamp to the next. I remember one time I started with a quarter and bought a stamp and left with $50, thinking, hey, if I could do this, I could do anything. And it's not that everything worked. I failed a lot, but I never ever felt like I wouldn't be able to work hard enough to succeed.
I spent a bunch of time analyzing and reflecting on why it was that we were even able to do it, because all reasons suggest that we shouldn't have been able to do it, right? Because all these other companies had way more engineering power and servers and time and money and all this stuff. And I actually think that this is a pretty instructive thing for anything that you want to go do, because this is the same property is going to be true for anything that you guys start, is that someone else is going to have more resources and be able to do it. The reason why I think we actually ended up being the ones doing it is because we just cared way more about it than everyone else, right? So there were always projects at some of these other companies that were these hobbies, but we always thought that it was this really important thing and really just like felt in our gut and our heart that we wanted to do it. And early on there were always these skeptics saying that, oh, this can't be a business. We didn't actually care that much about it being a business early on. But a lot of the reason why bigger companies didn't invest in it was because it wasn't clear that there was a model that would work for it.
It seemed like a bad idea.
Yeah, and I actually think that that's true for a lot of the best ideas, where it is that it's not that someone else can't do it, they actually can, and the odds are stacked against you, but I think often that belief in the fact that you just care so much about what you're doing is the only thing that kind of drives you to do it. And, to be honest, that kind of drives me to this day. I mean, one of the big emphasis points for the company right now is internet.org. And, for a while we had this rallying cry of, can we connect 1 billion people? And, when we started talking about that, we thought that was crazy, right? It was way bigger than any service in the world that had been built. And, it was 10 digits long, right? It's like it felt crazy. We'd never get to that. But then the thing is, as we started to actually get closer to that, we took a step back and we're like, all right, well, our mission isn't actually to get 1 in 7 people in the world to be connected. It's we want to connect everyone. So it's a big issue that only around 1/3 of the people in the world have access to the internet, and that's something that we think that we can do something about. And similar to early Facebook, there's no business model around this. I mean, all the people who have all the money in the world, I mean, it's not necessarily a fair thing, are already the people who are on Facebook, right? It's in the first, 1/7 of the world. But we just believe really strongly. It's like, this is what we are here to do. This is what our company cares about. I care about it. The team cares about it. Our culture cares about it. So we're just going to keep pushing on it. And I actually think a lot of the reason why great stuff gets built is because it's kind of irrational at the time. But so it kind of selects for the people who care the most about it doing it.
I visualized this for myself. When I was selling copiers door to door, I had a very clear vision of what my life was going to be like. And I encourage everyone to do it. Take a snap photo of what success looks like for you. How many employees do you have? How much are you making? Where do you live? Are you sitting at a table with world leaders? Are you standing on a stage in New York City giving a speech? And hold on to that snapshot, and you will subconsciously start to make decisions that get you there. And so my snap photo for myself when I was going door to door to sell copiers was to be self-employed, invent a product that I could sell to lots of people and not just one copier to each person, and create a business for myself that would continue to fund itself if I wasn't present. I wanted money to be generated without me having to be there. I was that specific in my vision.
Create the highest, grandest vision possible for your life, because you become what you believe. When I was a little girl, Mississippi, growing up on the farm, only buckwheat is a role model, watching my grandmother boil clothes in a big iron pot through the screen door because we didn't have a washing machine and made everything we had. I watched her and realized somehow inside myself, in the spirit of myself, that although this was segregated Mississippi and I was colored and female, that my life could be bigger, greater than what I saw. I remember being 4 or 5 years old. I certainly couldn't articulate it, but it was a feeling, and a feeling that I allowed myself to follow. I allowed myself to follow because if you were to ask me what is the secret to my success, it is because I understand that there is a power greater than myself that rules my life. And in life, if you can be still long enough in all of your endeavors, the good times, the hard times, to connect yourself to the source. I call it God, you can call it whatever you want to, the force, nature, Allah, the power. If you can connect yourself to the source and allow the energy that it is your personality, your life force to be connected to the greater force, anything is possible for you. I am proof of that. I think that my life, the fact that I was born where I was born and the time that I was and have been able to do what I've done speaks to the possibility, not that I am special, but that it could be done.
My job, one of my jobs as the leader of Amazon, is to encourage people to be bold. And people love to focus on things that aren't yet working. And that's good, it's human nature. That kind of divine discontent can be very helpful. But you really, it's incredibly hard to get people to take bold bets. And you need to encourage that. And if you're going to take bold bets, they're going to be experiments. And if they're experiments, you don't know ahead of time whether they're going to work. Experiments are by their very nature prone to failure. But big successes, a few big successes compensate for dozens and dozens of things that didn't work. So, bold bets, AWS, Kindle, Amazon Prime, our third-party seller business, all of those things are examples of bold bets that did work, and they pay for a lot of experiments. I've made billions of dollars of failures at Amazon.com, literally billions of dollars of failures. And you might remember Pets.com or Cosmo, or give myself a root canal with no anesthesia very easily. None of those things are fun, but they don't matter. What really matters is companies that don't continue to experiment, companies that don't embrace failure, they eventually get in a desperate position where the only thing they can do is make a kind of Hail Mary bet at the very end of their corporate existence. Whereas companies that are, making bets all along, even, big bets, but not bet the company bets. I don't believe in bet the company bets. That's when you're desperate. That's the last thing you can do.
A lot of times my issue is people are not setting goals that will be something that somebody who becomes rich or could do anything. You got to be excited about working on that for 10 years. So you got to have a big enough goal that you attract the best people and you retain them and you keep them focused. And then in my experience, you don't go wrong. Maybe you don't hit it next year, or maybe you fail entirely and you discover something more exciting to work on with the same set of people.
Sometimes being young and trying things, you're so naive and you don't know any better. All you do is learn. And if you fail, it doesn't matter. And so whether I was 9, 10, 12, 16, 21, the failures were irrelevant. And whether you're 9, 12, 16, 21, 22, 24, I'm sleeping on the couch. I have a car with a hole in the floorboard. I'm living like a bum and like a student. And so what did I have to lose? And so I think that influenced me as much as anything. So it was, my dad was like, go for it. Why not? What have you got to lose? You have to sleep on a different couch. So I think that was motivation.
Add some value. There's a true societal and business value proposition. There's a contribution. I find, and I don't do this for reasons other than the fact that you can't long-term build a viable business without making a real contribution. Most people look at, they can start a business, do an IPO, make some money. Almost always that leads to businesses that are round trips, what I call they go up and go down. To build a durable business, you really have to focus on the value proposition.
You must be consistent. When you try a business and you start, you might have hiccups here and there, but it does not mean that that business is not going to work. There must be challenges. In fact, what I keep saying is that life without challenges is very, very boring. So if you have challenges, you just have to know how to work out or how to work around these challenges, and you will be successful once you are consistent. What business doesn't like is for you to try something, and then once you have 1 or 2 problems, now you want to change and move into another business. That doesn't work in business at all.
I have an old-fashioned belief that I should expect to make money in things that I understand. And when I say understand, I don't mean understand, what the product does or anything like that. I mean understand what the economics of the business are likely to look like 10 years from now or 20 years from now. I know, in general, what the economics of, say, Wrigley chewing gum will look like 10 years from now. The internet isn't going to change the way people chew gum. It isn't going to change which gum they chew. If you own the chewing gum market in a big way, and you've got Double Mint and Spearmint and Juicy Fruit, those brands will be there 10 years from now. So I can't pinpoint exactly what the numbers are going to look like on Wrigley, but I'm not going to be way off if I try to look forward on something like that. That evaluating that company is within what I call my circle of competence. I understand what they do, I understand the economics of it, I understand the competitive aspects of the business. So figuring out the economic consequences, TV. I think there's, 20, 25 million sets a year sold in the United States. I don't think there's one of them made in the United States anymore. You'd say TV set manufacturer, what a wonderful business. Everybody, nobody had a TV in 1950, or thereabouts, 45 to 50. Everybody has multiple sets now, but nobody in the United States has made any real money making the sets. They're all out of business. The Magnavoxes, the RCAs, all of those companies. Radio was the equivalent in the over 500 companies making radios in the 1920s. Again, I don't think there's a U.S. radio manufacturer at the present time. But Coca-Cola, what was it, 1884 at Jacobs Pharmacy or whatever, the fellow comes up with something. A lot of copiers over the years. But now you've got a company that is selling roughly 1.1 billion 8-ounce servings of its product, not all Coke, Sprite, and some others, daily throughout the world 117 years later. So understanding the economic characteristics of a business is different than predicting the fact that an industry is going to do wonderfully. And so when I look at the internet businesses, or I look at tech businesses, I say this is a marvelous thing, and I love to play around on the computer, and I order my books from Amazon and all kinds of things, but I don't know who's going to win. And unless I know who's going to win, I'm not interested in investing. I'll just play around on the computer. And defining your circle of competence is the most important aspect of investing. It's not how important, how large your circle is. You don't have to be an expert on everything. But knowing where the perimeter of that circle of what you know and what you don't know is, and staying inside of it, is all important. Tom Watson Sr., who started IBM, said in his book, he said, "I'm no genius," he said, "but I'm smart in spots, and I stay around those spots." And that is the key. So if I understand a few things, and I stick in that arena, I'll do okay. And if I don't understand something, but I get all excited about it because my neighbors are talking about it, and the stocks are going up and everything, I start fooling around someplace else, eventually I'll get creamed, and I should.
Do something you're very passionate about, and don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day. I think we actually saw this, I think you see it all over the place in many different contexts, but I think we saw it in the internet world quite a bit, where at the sort of peak of the sort of internet mania in, say, 1999, you found people who were very passionate about something. They kind of left that job and decided, I'm going to do something in the internet, because it's it was almost like the the 1849 gold rush in a way. I mean, you find that people, if you go back and study the history of the 1849 gold rush, you find that at that time, everybody who was within shouting distance of California was, they might have been a doctor, but they quit being a doctor and they started panning for gold. And that almost never works. And even if it does work, according to some metric, financial success or whatever it might be, I suspect it leaves you ultimately unsatisfied. So you really need to be very clear with yourself. And I think one of the best ways to do that is this notion of projecting yourself forward to age 80, looking back on your life and trying to make sure you've minimized the number of regrets you have. That works for career decisions. It works for family decisions. Do you want? I have a 14-month-old son, and it's very easy for me to, if I think about myself when I'm 80, I know I want to watch that little guy grow up. And so I don't want to be 80 and think, shoot, I missed that whole thing and I don't have the kind of relationship with my son that I wished I had, and so on and so on. So if you think about that, so I guess another thing that I would recommend to people is that they always take a long-term point of view. And I think this is something about which there's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of people, and I'm just not one of them, believe that you should live for the now. I think what you do is you think about the great expanse of time ahead of you and try to make sure that you're planning for that in a way that's going to leave you ultimately satisfied. So this is just this is the way it works for me. And I mean, everybody needs to find that for themselves. So I think there are a lot of paths to satisfaction, and you need to find one that works for you.